All right, welcome back. This is another one of the lessons for protecting artists and designers' legal rights at CCAD at Columbus College of Art and Design. This is a short lesson that I call it's called the lesson of the jar. It's actually taken from Stephen Covey's Big Rocks seminar that he does. The lesson goes a little bit like this. I normally do this in the classroom, and I like to share this with the entire class, make it a class experience, and you'll see why as I'm going through it. But it's got enough value on it that it works even just as a as a recording here on YouTube. All right, so it's the middle of the semester, and the professor's there with his class, and he says, "All right, class, we've got an exercise that we're going to try today." And he reaches underneath the table and he pulls out this big, wide-mouthed glass jar. And he sets it on the table. And he then reaches to get a platter covered with fist-sized rocks. And he says to the class, "How many of these rocks do you think we can get in the jar?" And the class looks at him. They all start making their guesses, and some are high, some are low. And so the professor says, "Okay, let's find out." And he starts with the rocks. He puts one rock in the jar, and then another, and another, and another. And until finally, he can't fit any more of the big rocks in there. And he looks at the class, and he says, "Is the jar full?" Everybody looks at each other, and they see no more rocks could fit, so they say, "Yes, the jar's full." And the professor says, "Not so fast." And he reaches underneath the table and he pulls out a bucket of gravel. And he starts to pour from the bucket the gravel into all the little spaces in between the big rocks. And he does that and shakes it, and they settle some, and then he puts some more into the jar. And finally, he can't fit any more gravel in, and he looks at the class and he says, "Is the jar full?" And the students all look at each other and they say, "Maybe not." And the professor says, "Good." So he reaches under the table and he pulls out a big bag of sand, and he lifts it up and he starts to pour the sand into the jar. And he shakes it, lets it settle until he can't fit any more sand in. And again, he looks at the class and he asks, "Is the jar full?" And the whole class shouts at him, "No." And he says, "Good." So he goes and he reaches underneath the table and he pulls out a pitcher of water. And he starts pouring a little bit at a time the water into the glass jar. And he pours and pours until he can't fit any more water in. And he looks at the class and he doesn't ask. He just says, "All right, now the jar is full." And he says, "Can anybody tell me what the lesson is that you learned from this? What's my point?" Yeah, finally full. So, what's the point of this illustration? And one of the students says, "Well, no matter how full your schedule is, you can always pack more in." And the professor kind of chuckles and says, "Well, that's a good guess, but no, that's not the point." So he looks at the class and he says, "The point is that if I hadn't put those big rocks in first, I never would have gotten them in." So, in both your business and your personal lives, you've got big rocks, you've got gravel, you've got sand, and you've got water. And the natural tendency seems to be favoring the latter three of those elements, leaving little space for big rocks. So, it's important to set time aside for the big rocks, the things that are important, not just the little things. What are the big rocks in your life? Is it some project that you are devoting yourself to? Is it spending time with your family? Is it your health? Is it finances? Is it your personal development? Your dreams? Make a list of the big rocks in your life. Then make a plan. And make sure that those big rocks are put into your plan first. Block out the time in your schedule for those activities. You'll be amazed at all the other stuff that still gets done, but you get the important things done first. So that is the lesson of the jar. Big rocks first. Make sure that you put the important things in your life first. When you're working on a business, it's more than just a business. It's got to be everything in your life and how it all works together. That's what's important. Make a plan and make sure that everything works together, and make sure that you prioritize. Put the important things in your life at the top of the list.